Well, thank you all for joining our session today. My name is Emily. I'm an instructional designer with the TLC. So our seminar series session today is designing transparent assignments for student success. This is a hybrid session, so we have Quincy and Brenda from the TLC with us here in the room. And then on Zoom, we have Erin and Julie facilitating that. If you're in the room and you want access to the slides in advance, there's a QR code or a little link there that you can access those. And also this session is being recorded and it will be on the TLC Learning channel on YouTube after today, after the session. So you can check out the recording there if you would like. All right, so let's look at the session agenda. So we'll start today with a brief introduction to transparency in learning and teaching, TILT, and how that applies to assessment design. We'll see an example of an assignment before the TILT framework was applied and after, so how that might change an assessment for you. And then we'll have a small group activity where you'll be able to put into practice the TILT framework into a sample assignment. We'll share out some ideas that you guys come up with during that, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So before we go deeper into all of that, let's think about a situation that you might have found yourself in. So have you ever received a student submitted assignment and thought, this isn't exactly what I asked for? So some people are nodding. So you may be like the woman in this photo. We see she is looking at what is technically a pizza, but maybe not the one that she was expecting. It looks like it has apples potentially or walnuts on there. So it's just not quite meeting her expectations, right? So she has a confused look on her face. And certainly, I'm sure I have felt that before. I'm sure you might have felt that before with some student submissions. So let's think about why that might happen, how we can address this or a solution, which we'll focus on today. So in order to kind of further analyze that problem, we'll take a look at a sample assignment and just think about how expectations might have been a little more clear here. So in this sample assignment, we'll read the assignment as if you're a student encountering it for the first time. If you're in the room here, you do have some papers on your table. One of them says TILT revision activity, and there is the sample assignment in the middle of that page if you want to check it out there, or feel free to follow along up here. If you're on Zoom, it should have been in the chat. But yeah, we'll take a look at this sample assignment and consider what works well here and what might be unclear or difficult for students to understand. So this is a reflection assignment, the course Human Anatomy 1. There's an instructor note that reads, this is an end of semester reflection assignment. I want students to connect what they learned in the course to how they'll think about patients in their program. And then some assignment instructions, which read, write a 2 to 3 page reflection paper based on your experience in this course. Your paper should describe what you learned, what challenged you, and how your thinking has changed. Include connections to course concepts and professional practice. Submit your completed reflection to the assignment in Canvas by the due date. Your reflection will be graded on the quality of your writing and the depth of your reflection. So just upon first glance, does anything strike you as what's working well and what may be unclear or vague or confusing for students? Yes. Okay. Good point. So someone in the room said experience might be a little vague. What do you mean by that? What do you actually want them to write about? Feelings? Michelle, I saw your hand raised. Needs more robust leading questions. What does experience mean? Sarah, yeah.
And in my experience, students go straight to grading. And so they're going to ask you, what does quality mean and what does depth mean?
Perfect. Yeah, very good points. That graded on quality and depth, what's that? My quality might be very different from any other ideas. Yeah.
Very vague. Like, how has your thinking changed? Like, thinking about what?
Yeah, right. Good. Any other thoughts? Yes, in the back. The folks on Zoom won't be able to hear us unless we have the microphone, so.
Well, one of her instructor note is that she wants them to think about patients in their clinical program. And there's if that's a very specific thing that she wants them to get out of it, there's not that much in the instructions that actually touches on that.
Okay, good
Besides
point. So she might have
professional
thought,
practice.
I'm expecting something that I didn't actually tell them to do. Yeah.
The due date catches my eye. So they list due date, but without actually stating the date. And so then they're going to have to take an extra step and look up what that is somewhere else.
I like that point. There's an extra step of now I have to go find that information somewhere else. We can put it all in the same place. That's a good idea. Does anyone else in the room have a thought? Yeah.
Think that
Sorry. Thank you.
I think that where she says your reflection will be graded on the quality of your writing, there should be a rubric attached. So the students, I think something kind of similar to what you said, but a very specific, how are you defining quality of your writing and depth?
I like the mention of a rubric. That's great to set expectations. We have another idea.
I think too, professional practice can be pretty tricky. If they're in human anatomy 1, year 1, they
Yeah.
might not really have an idea of what that even means at all.
Yeah. Very good observation. Anything else? These are all great points. Well, we do have lots of questions, right? We might have a lot of questions. And thank you for sharing that, everyone, for your ideas. Thanks for sharing that. We'll revisit this in a moment to think about how we can apply or maybe make it a little bit more clear and transparent. So now we've seen this sample assignment, kind of identified what might be problematic here. So let's look at a potential solution for us. So this comes in Transparency in Learning and Teaching, or TILT. So TILT is a framework that we can use for assessment, but just in general, the idea of transparency in learning and teaching is when we tell students how students are learning course content through activities and assessments, why the learning activities are designed as they are, and how that learning applies to their real life or other contexts beyond this assignment, beyond this course. Maybe it applies to other programmatic courses or their field or future job. Explaining all of that to students is going to reduce guesswork and reduce the cognitive load. So now they can focus on the task rather than what am I supposed to do? How should I? All of those questions. So let's see, in particular, the TILT assignment framework has 3 components. So purpose, task, criteria. So in your assignment instructions, we want to include these 3 items. So first, purpose. Why are we doing this assignment? What relevance does it have to this course or to the real world? Other contexts. So hopefully that shows the value to students of why am I doing this? That might be a question, and it might be obvious to you, but not them, of why are we actually doing this? So directly stating that, just making that a little bit clearer. And number 2, the second component is task. So the task would explain what to do, steps to follow, and perhaps steps to avoid. Maybe there are common mistakes that and you expect them not to go down, roads not to go down potentially. And then the third item is criteria. So what does success look like? One person mentioned already a rubric. So rubrics could be very detailed, of a list of criteria and a ranking for each one, maybe beginning to advanced, and specific point numbers from 1 to 5. But it can also be more general or broad, like a holistic rubric with just a description of what is an A and what is a B and what is a C, just giving students some kind of idea of what's the difference between success and mediocre or average. So another way you might do that is a checklist. Someone else mentioned their students were just demonstrating something in a kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, you did the 4 things. That's a checklist that we might apply, that we might provide them in advance. So before they submit or before they do the assignment, they know what they're being evaluated on and what they need to include. And then third, maybe we provide some examples. And that could be, we do give examples of multiple levels of work, right? That successful, like, here's what an A looks like. That's something I used to enjoy doing with students of, here's an A and here's a C, but rather than tell them, just here's two and then a rubric, and can you apply the rubric to both example, and how do you evaluate them, which might help them really critically think about the items in the rubric and how to do that maybe in their own project, but also having that knowledge of what's lacking or what's missing in that kind of C or mediocre, right, submission that makes the other one stand out more. So these three items by themselves right now, you might think I include that in my assessments, or I don't include that, or maybe sometimes I include. So just the idea behind the TILT framework is that these three things are consistently applied, that every assignment has each of these three. And what that looks like is different for each assignment and for each course and instructor. But those three components can be included in each of the three. And it's also not about making the assignment less rigorous or anything like that. So we can still apply these and have the assignment meet the same goals that you intended it to. So that's our TILT framework, the three components. So let's see an example of an assignment redesign. So in this example that I'll show you, we started, oops, I just got lost on the page. Okay, here we go. An assignment redesign. So the original instructions here are for a policy brief assignment for a public health course. And it's in quotations, just 2 sentences. Write a 1,500-word policy brief on a public health topic of your choice, due week 10. And we might say, I've seen instructions like that before, right? Maybe you've written instructions like that before. And we might say, well, yeah, I'm giving the students choice and freedom and autonomy, and they're responsible. Maybe they're graduate students, so they should know how to do this. And all of that may be true, and we can still keep those things in mind while applying that TILT framework of those 3 components without losing any of those things that we do want to preserve. So let's look at how that same assignment was redesigned, applying the 3 purpose task criteria. So the purpose starts with, this assignment asks you to practice translating research evidence into actionable recommendations for a specific audience, which is a core skill in public health science. That's nice to say, right? It's a core skill. Next, you'll learn to identify the strongest available evidence, weigh competing policy options, and write for decision makers who need clear, concise guidance. So those 3 things that you'll learn to do, those look like learning outcomes or learning objectives, which is also helpful for you to include as the instructor to know, I'm aligning this assignment with specific outcomes that I have set for the course. And telling that to students, again, shows them, okay, now I see why I should participate or take this seriously. These are the 3 things that I'm expected to know. And then finally, the last sentence states, this is the kind of work public health professionals do when advising city councils, hospital administrators, and nonprofit boards. So that's that connecting it to a different context, right? Or how might people in the field use these skills? That's also really showing the value to the students. Oh, I might apply this later. I probably should practice this now. If I'm expected to know how to do this later, this is a great opportunity to get feedback on it. So yeah, hopefully that shows them the value of the assignment. And next we have the task, and we start still with that choose. So students, choose a public health issue relevant to your community. They still have a lot of freedom and autonomy there, right? But then we break it down into 5 concrete steps that the instructor expects the students to do. So just give that expectation right to the student. So 1, identify 3 peer-reviewed sources. 2, write a 1-paragraph problem statement. 3, draft 2 competing recommendations. 4, write a final recommendation. And 5, format it using the template on Canvas. So those 5 things, you know, maybe the student didn't know they were supposed to include peer-reviewed sources. So from the instructor's original instructions, that just 1-sentence thing, it didn't mention any sources. If a student submitted the assignment without, would they say, oh, how dare you? You didn't include sources. I'm totally expecting that. And just letting that student know, right? We want them to achieve success. So giving them the steps to do that is going to help them get there. Another thing I like about this list of tasks is that there's time expectations. Some of y'all noticed that. So that's like 5.5 hours, I think, for the 5 tasks. And so that helps the student to know, right, how much time should I take? But in the original just one sentence instruction, if a student spent 45 minutes on that and felt like, wow, good for me, I spent 45 minutes, like almost an hour, right? Maybe they felt that that was sufficient. And then the instructor looks at it and again thinks, how dare you, 45 minutes, you didn't even spend an hour on this, I can tell, it's so low. Meanwhile, if a student spent 10 hours on it, would that student then be like, I'm spending 10 hours, twice as long as the instructor said, maybe this is a red flag for me, or maybe there's a disconnect that student can take note of or something. So those instructions are very helpful in setting those expectations for the student before even diving into the assignment. And then the third component is criteria. We do see a rubric here. And then also the instructor mentions there's 2 example briefs from a previous semester. So that's where they're just providing them, and the students, it sounds like, can go explore the examples if they want to, kind of up to them. But this rubric, we have, I think, 4 criteria listed here. Each one has the point value. So there's some type of understanding there too of how they're graded. So that's really helpful. A helpful thing about rubrics as well. It's not just here's the thing, but well, which one's more important? If they're all equally weighted, like they're all 25 points, that's more indicative than maybe one is 80 points and the other ones are 5 points, right? That tells the students a lot of where to focus their attention while completing the assignment. And again, ultimately, that gets back to you with a better submission, hopefully. So that's an example of how the TILT framework was applied to this assignment, that from that one sentence, here it is, we still give the student a lot of choice and autonomy, and they're still responsible for a rigorous assignment, but just those expectations are set a little bit more. And then that's based off of this TILT template. So I'll show you this real quick. This is on the table if you're on a table. If you're on Zoom, Erin just shared that in the chat there for you. So this template is something that could be applied to any assignment. So we have the purpose there where we are adding the learning objectives for students, letting them know what those are. They might connect to specific institutional learning outcomes or programmatic outcomes or something like that. And again, how is this important beyond the context of this course? So is it authentically applied in some other context in the field, perhaps? And then the purpose also has a section for skills and knowledge. So in the skills area, we're going to tell them, what are they practicing, right? What skills are they practicing in this assignment? And we can take from Bloom's taxonomy here in order to write this list if we would like. So some of y'all are familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, where we have the lower order thinking, right? From remember, understand, and then we build up to the higher order thinking, create, evaluate, synthesize. Yeah. So this list here looks like we're using the Bloom's taxonomy action verbs. And then the knowledge section here will tell students what information or course concepts will they become familiar with here. So there may be some specific course content or concepts. And then the second component of the TILT framework is task, where we are defining what activities students should do, listing the steps or guidelines. Another thing I like that they mention here is if maybe your assignment expects students to struggle a little bit to find the answer, and telling students that outright may make them feel a little bit more confident, or a sense of belonging. If the student goes into the assignment very much struggling and thinking, this isn't for me, I can't do this, I give up. Just letting that be known from the get-go too, of like, I expect you to struggle and this is a challenge for the XYZ reason, right? Why we might want students to go through that. And then the third item here in our TILT framework is the criteria for success. So we define the characteristics of the final outcome or finished product. We might analyze multiple examples, maybe real world examples, and then focusing on how, excellent differs from adequate. So that might be helpful to provide. We might have a checklist where they can apply it to their submission or even peers submission if you do some type of peer review activity. And then the grading, right? So we want to tell students how it's graded, maybe how it factors into their overall course grade, especially if it's a major assignment that you're weighting heavily there. And then later, afterward, you might do some type of reflection activity where students comment on their graded work and refine their learning strategies for future learning experiences. So this is the TILT framework that you can apply to any assignment in the future. All right, so we have seen examples, looked at the framework. So now we'll ask you to apply the TILT framework to the sample assignment that we looked at the beginning. So that reflection where we noted some of the problematic areas, right? So how might we apply these three? And then now we see the woman is happy with her pepperoni pizza. So she got what she expected. And maybe we can turn that sample assignment into what we expect or get what we expect from students. So I'm going to open this TILT revision activity. So this is what you should be looking at. Your task is to revise the sample assignment. You have about 20 minutes. It's the sample reflection that we already saw. And so there's space here to write in the purpose, task, and criteria. All right, in our final minutes here, I'll just share, there's resources here. If you got the slides at the beginning, there's some extra resources here. And then the TILT Higher Ed website, I highly recommend if you're interested to explore more. It's like a very robust website, I think, with a lot of good resources. And then we're always here at the TLC, so you can reach out to us via email or through a consultation if you would like to discuss this further. And we'll hang out for a bit if anyone has questions that we can field. Otherwise, thank you all for joining us today, and we definitely appreciate your participation and sharing your great ideas. Thank you so much.